Today on Locked On Rockies. If you want to stay informed throughout the offseason and the season, and anytime you really need Rockies information, the Rockies Beat newsletter is a great follow. Why? Because you get to learn about the Rockies' plans coming up this season. And this week's edition of it revealed some interesting details about the future of the Colorado Rockies.
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the 30th day of October in the year 2024. I'm your host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. If your team is the Colorado Rockies, guess what? You're in the right spot, because that's what we do around here each and every day. Free and streaming on your favorite streaming services and on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, where you can be part of the show. You can fire off your Rockies hot takes. You can let me know what's on your mind when it comes to the Colorado Rockies, because that's what we want to do all off season long. I want to answer your Rockies questions. And if I can't answer them, we're going to get people on the show that can answer them. But anyway, folks, we are going to dive into the Rockies Beat newsletter from Thomas Harding. It's one of the best things you can follow if you want to stay up to date with Rockies information. Thomas Harding, of course, one of the best in the business, one of the most connected to the Colorado Rockies, I would say, when it comes to Rockies media. So we're going to dive into some key details here, and one of them focusing specifically on the second baseman for the Colorado Rockies, Brendan Rodgers, and a couple of things that might change the picture of how you think the Rockies will approach this offseason. And I wonder if there's some surprises in store, but this kind of lays out a plan that doesn't surprise me too much. All right, we're going to dive into all that and more, plus maybe a little conversation about fans at the ballpark there in New York, coming up on today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Before we dive into all the fun, got to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. And I, of course, am the host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk. And I've been doing this for this will be approaching my fourth and a half season. I don't know. It all starts blurring together a little bit there, but wanted to dive into this and just kind of focus on a couple of key points here from Thomas Harding's reporting here. It sounds like out of the Rockies that are free agents or free agents, they are free agents. Well, free agents to be, I guess, with the season not officially over. Sounds like Jacob Stallings is going to be the only one coming back, and they are probably going to pair him with, obviously Goodman or Romo. I just starting here, I think a little competition in spring for backup catcher between those two guys is going to be a good thing. I think those two guys having to kind of, you have Hunter Goodman, who's had more experience at the big league level, inconsistent experience, but also, still getting time up there and getting some looks, mixed with Romo, who got the call up and didn't necessarily set the world on fire immediately. I think by setting the stage for those two guys to have a little competition going, a little something where in reality you're going to be fine either way. Like if I had to put money on it right now, I would say Goodman's going to get the spot. And Harding mentions that they might pick up a catcher. I wouldn't. You have Jacob Stallings, who also it's mentioned in the piece by Harding that you don't want to play him too much. I think if you are really worried about that, and maybe you're getting to a point where Stallings might need some rest or something like that, could you run a three platoon catcher? Can you shown that you've had Goodman and Romo? Well, didn't they have Goodman and Romo on the roster at the same time to end the season last year? With Goodman's ability to play in the outfield, potentially, and that's where else they played him. Right field again is an interesting spot for the Rockies. So I do wonder what's going to be that type of plan. But I think focusing specifically on spring and giving both of those guys, like if you're Hunter Goodman, right, you've been looking for your way to get consistent playing time and find that spot on the roster. We know he prefers catching. We heard that multiple times throughout the season. We saw him, I believe we saw him perform better when he caught as well at the dish. So the point is, I think it's okay if Romo's going to need a little more time. You can go with Goodman. And then on the vice versa, Goodman is still an interesting piece for your bench, but it doesn't help him get on the field if Romo somehow takes a big step forward. If you're ready to go with Romo as your backup catcher, I think that competition, and then we're going to be able to get a clear idea out of those two. And instead of bringing in another catcher, I'd rather create that competition, create that there, and see what that'll lead us. Because again, we're talking about backup catcher here, and I'm fine with Jacob Stallings as the starter. Jacob Stallings can catch a good game. He had his best hitting numbers offensively. He wasn't anemic on offense here. What were the numbers here? 263 batting average with 9 home runs and an 810 OPS in 82 games. So great. If that means that if we can get somewhere close to that, mixed with his defense, because he's going to be 35 next year, and plays in 82 games, that's great. That is 80 games that you're getting Romo, or you are getting Romo or Goodman. So I think that is a smart way. Especially if you are sitting in a situation where we want to go Romo, you're still having a situation where Goodman can play other positions. So that'll be an interesting, that creates an interesting storyline for spring for us to watch and see what the Rockies do. I just don't think the Rockies are going to get what they need to help this off. If they're not going to make a ton of moves this offseason and in terms of adding players to the roster, a backup catcher that most likely isn't going to be a huge offensive threat isn't that exciting to me. I'd rather us use this opportunity to see what we got from a guy in Goodman that has a couple of flashes and shown some situations that he could be great and do some cool stuff. And I really like his athleticism. I really like how good he is at being able to do multiple things on the ball field. Or we're turning to a prospect that has been talked about for a long time, a prospect that people are very excited for, a prospect that could benefit from maybe just going through the grind and working with and learning with Stallings. I think Stallings will serve as a solid mentor for these young guys. So that's there for that catcher battle. That's some interesting thing. Here are the arbitration situations for the Rockies, and I'm going to read a little bit here from the Rockies Beat newsletter from Thomas Harding here. The Rockies are expected to tender 2025 offers to all of the eligible players, although they are expected to entertain trade offers for right-hander Cal Quantrill and could remake the lineup in the right deal involving second baseman Brendan Rodgers. However, when asked directly this week, General Manager Bill Schmidt said Rodgers is part of the 25 plan. The other arbitration-eligible players who must be tendered offers by the 6 p.m. Mountain deadline on November 22nd are lefty starter Austin Gomber, righty starter Ryan Feltner, outfielder Sam Hilliard, righty reliever Justin Lawrence, and lefty reliever Lucas Gilbreth. Okay, so not surprised to hear about really any of those arbitration-eligible. I'm not surprised to hear all about that. I think the Rockies are really hoping that Justin Lawrence can bounce back. I think they are starting to get really curious to seeing what they have with Ryan Feltner. Going off of at least just this thing, it's interesting that Austin Gomber was mentioned in trades before, and now Austin Gomber here not mentioned in the same list there of Cal Quantrill and Brendan Rodgers there from Harding, and I'm wondering if that's intentional. I'm wondering if the Rockies are wanting to keep Gomber around now for his familiarity with Colorado, adding depth to the starter, but maybe he can slip into the bullpen and be effective there for you guys, giving you a veteran presence there. It is just interesting because before we saw that the Rockies would be shopping both Gomber and Quantrill, but as Harding here only mentioning that Quantrill and Rodgers are the two possible deals is another thing. Lucas Gilbreth, still recovering, I think, and probably Rockies, of course, wanting to see more there. So none of those really. And Sam Hilliard, this kind of goes up to if you have to go arbitration with Sam Hilliard, and hopefully you can get a deal done there. I think that's going to be a fine bench ad as opposed to and someone that you don't need to rely on. Just don't go for that player like a Cave or a Hilliard and over rely on them. Use them as the bench players, but the Rockies do need to add something to this lineup to make the offense better. It really does. So, but I'm not opposed to Sam Hilliard getting the deal and returning to the Rockies. I think Sam Hilliard has kind of shown, and last year especially shown, that being a bench player for the Rockies it seems like that might be his thing, and that's cool with me. And I don't think it's going to break any bank or anything like that. And there's actually a little bit more about payroll coming up in this piece that I think is important to note with that as well. So we'll get to that in segment 2. But just to wrap up there and kind of bring up the thing that's important is I think not trading Brendan Rodgers before the season starts is the best idea. Is a better idea for the Rockies. And I say this because you give Amador more time to develop. You get yourself in a position that Brendan Rodgers can go through what most likely will be a struggle for the first month of the season and then pick up as he goes along. You get time for Brendan Rodgers to build up some momentum and steam for you. And you're putting yourself in a situation to be a better ball club with Brendan Rodgers to start the season and show off what he can do a little bit more. I think the only reason I've talked so much about a Brendan Rodgers trade, it's not that I don't actually like Brendan Rodgers. When Brendan Rodgers plays his best ball, it is great. It is stellar. I just don't think his timetable is matching up with the Rockies anymore. I don't think it makes sense to put so much stock in Ryan McMahon and Brendan Rodgers as these cornerstone pieces where I think both of these guys would benefit if they didn't have to be the number one guy. And I hate to make it sound like that because that degrades what their abilities. But I do think it would be better, and the Rockies would be and those players would be better if they had guys around them that could build them up, guys around them that could hit them in, guys around them that could do more, instead of a young team that's trying to really figure things out. A young team that went through it last year with the strikeouts, with getting called up and down, with the inconsistent playing times. I mean, there is still so much development to be done with the Rockies. I just don't know if the timetable, McMahon can be the vet guy, the good third base. I think, and it's shown that the Rockies are probably ready to, are already made that commitment with the deal in places, not trading him, etc. But Brendan Rodgers is in front of one of your most excited prospects, even with the issues or the concerns you might have from him from last year. And he's going to be in a situation where he's going to need to get paid, including arbitration this year. So I don't think I think the money part, especially arbitration, 1-year deal, isn't going to be the worst thing for the Rockies. If they take on the contract, they don't trade him, and then he goes on, like, that's one thing. But it puts them in a situation where they could possibly move him at the deadline, and where I think he'll be a more attractive piece as teams are figuring out they need a second baseman that will be a good defender and a good offensive player. So, it's important to note there in that too, where Schmidt says the Rockies are committed, that Rodgers is part of the 2025 plan. But that can mean a few things, especially if the plan is to let him play just the first half of the season and then trade him at the deadline, because that could be part of the plan. That could be the plan for the Rockies, and then go Amador for the second half of the season. And I don't think that's that crazy or out of the possibilities for the Rockies in 2025. All right, let's take a quick break and let's keep dissecting this thing. There's a lot of good information in here, good updates from Thomas Harding and the Rockies Beat newsletter, which is available for you to go check out and get sent to your emails, which that's how I get it. But folks, we will be right back with more Locked On Rockies. Got to tell you about the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. Super simple, too. It's got over 100 or 10 million members, I should say, and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the place to get real money sports action. And guess what? They invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks does not hit. And PrizePicks puts its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When your picks hit, you can get your money in as quick as 15 minutes. Download the app today. That's the PrizePicks app, and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup after using the promo code LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks. PrizePicks, run your game. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast for free and streaming on your favorite streaming services, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. If your team is the Colorado Rockies, you found us. You found the spot for daily Rockies talk. One of them. There's lots of great people out there making cool Rockies stuff. For your second listen of the day, go check out Locked On MLB. Our guy Sully's got you covered with all things World Series, all things Major League Baseball, all things fun, because it's a fun podcast. And also Colorado sports, Locked On Broncos, Avalanche, Nuggets, Buffs. Yes, we got podcasts for it all here on the Locked On Podcast Network, so go check it out. So was reading through the Thomas Harding Rockies Beat, was talking about something stuff that we saw in this, and we got through a couple of things here, but here's some more on the payroll situation for the Colorado Rockies, because that paints an interesting picture as well. If we heard this is a team that is cutting pay this year, reportedly. Maybe it's not for certain yet, but Harding dives into some details here. The Rockies finished 2024 with the payroll of $27.4 million, according to Cott's baseball contracts. As for 25, Schmidt noted that the club still hasn't learned the final amount of local television revenue from the first year of a subscription-based service. We'll see where we're at when we see what the TV situation is, Schmidt said. Is there a chance we're going to be lower? Yes, but Dick Monfort is going to put the money into the club. Beyond the uncertainty over television rights, the payroll figure could drop for 2 reasons. The club is no longer responsible for the $13 million salary for outfielder Charlie Blackmon, who retired at the end of the season. Also, if the Rockies move Quantrill and possibly Rodgers, what they save on arbitration increased salary for either or both could be used on multiple players with needed skills at lower cost. So there you go. That's a pretty good summary of it. That kind of makes sense. It kind of tracks with everything. But the question is, puts the money into the team. I wonder what that is. And I wonder what that number does look like. Again, as much as we say spend more, as much as we say spend and do this, I do sit there and wonder why or what does it, how much can you kind of like conceptualize on what you're going to spend, and how do you make that budget as an owner? Because again, in reality, the cutting of payroll this year in certain ways isn't necessarily the bad thing. It's just, are they going to also make some other decisions that are tough financially, which is spending a lot of more money, buying fully in, more in when if the team it rises up and gets back into an interesting level. Or other things. What type of sunk costs could the Chris Bryant situation go for if you're trying to free up that contract? What situation and what could you be on the hook for? How many are you really hoping that you have to get these deals done to spend all this money? It's interesting how much Cal Quantrill gets brought up in the trades, I guess. Because if you're looking to make that deal, you probably are trying to do it before the contract's in place, I would imagine, but it might be tricky. These are the type of things that it's kind of hard to speculate on when they might happen or what might happen, because as much as, yes, the Rockies need to spend money, they also do spend money. And also, like, right now, it isn't a need to be like, oh, throw it all at it. Like, as this team has, this is a rebuild, you know? This is a moment. This is a team that, even without that word and that thing actually being popular in amongst the Rockies, this is a team trying to figure it out. This is a team turning to younger guys. This is a team that's using younger talent and hoping and seeing where it can go from there. So it just creates an interesting situation of, like, how much of a big move do we want the Rockies really to make? And because how much of that is going to block these guys that we want to see play, these young rookies. But we also can't be so gung-ho to play just young guys, because this Rockies offense is bad. It's not good enough. So it does just create, like, when you're actually, when you do really think about it, it just does create an interesting situation through the minds of ownership. And just, sometimes it just kind of reminds me too. It's like, I'm not that envious of not having that job. Maybe. I mean, I don't know. It's like, it's just intense, At least in my mind. But, we do like to criticize, so we have to at least give some props here. But it is just curious. Like it is probably that TV money is a big deal. Huge deal. And, like, part of me isn't sitting here being, like, overly confident that it's going to help move the needle for the Rockies. I just don't sit here feeling super confident about the Rockies having a ton of dedicated streamers. They got me. So, there's one. But, like, it is just a question of, like, are people seeking out the Rockies? And then with the weird limitations, and I'm not quite sure how it ended up working in Colorado with blackout restrictions and all that stuff, but I don't think it probably should have been too much of a problem. But you had the game on the radio, you had you had the game on whatever. But now that it was on the streaming service, now that you had to take that extra step instead of it just being part of the sports package or whatever, I don't sit here abundantly confident that those numbers are going to be great. And I don't say that just to be a downer. I would love that number will give an idea of where the Rockies fandom is at. The interest in the Rockies, the relevancy of the Rockies. I think that number will paint an interesting picture if and when we ever get to see it. All right. Let's see if there's anything else interesting in this piece before we finish up. But we will do that in segment number 3 of today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Before we do that, got to tell you about the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes Gametime. I love Gametime. Can't lie. Gametime has gotten me into 3 big events, I think, now that I didn't have tickets to originally, but I was able to get them super easy, super quick, super fast, and just a couple of taps. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and their lowest price guaranteed, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. You can see the Gametime picks. Curation, yes, that's right. It is going to curate events just for you, and it makes it easier to save on more sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. You can save even more with exclusive in-app deals and select seats ahead of the game or event. And one of my favorite things, you are going to get a view from your seats. So you're going to know exactly where you're sitting what that view is going to be like, so you know exactly what you're getting in for and what you are paying for. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with the Gametime Picks and Gametime app. Create an account and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast for free and streaming on your favorite streaming services, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. And if your team is the Colorado Rockies, you're in the right spot. Go check out our guy Sully for your other Locked On MLB coverage as well. So Thomas Harding's piece continues with more, talking about prospects need to be protected on the 40-man. Zach Veen, Connor Van Soyak, I hope I'm saying that right. Juan Guerrero, Braden Ward, just some names there. And here are the needs that Thomas Harding lays out for the Rockies. Better offense. Schmidt said this starts with the growing of young players. And so we have a young team, and for the most part, we ran out a young lineup. So it's called inexperience, or it's called experience. Schmidt said we have to be more consistent offensively. So there you go. Will the Rockies find what happens? Or let's see. But the biggest offseason question is whether Schmidt and the Rockies find experienced hitters to increase in the frequency of balls in play and possibly influence those already in purple pinstripes. We'll see what happens, Schmidt said. We've got to figure out how to score more runs. That is true. Bullpen experience. Schmidt said he is looking for experience to augment a young bullpen that showed promise at the end of 24. A better bench. Colorado will depend on young players for the lineup, which also includes outfielders Nolan Jones, who's hoping to bounce back from a rough 2024, and Jordan Beck, who's looking to realize his potential after playing through hand and wrist injuries in his debut season. But two finds late in spring training. Jake Cave, who's set to become a free agent, and Hilliard had their moments as experienced reserved. Expect the Rockies to seek seasoned bench players. So maybe, my Hilliard comment probably fits there still. Let's see. There's a little bit more. They finished about the starting pitching, but not much there. So again, lots of good stuff in that piece. If you want to learn more, go read more. It's there. But man, so all those things, it's a lot, but it also paints an interesting picture. It does go to show that the Rockies do have a couple of big decisions to make. They're going to have a total snowball effect on what's happening with the Rockies going forward. We're running low on time, so I don't have a lot. But, boy, was that quite a sight to see those New Yorkers try to win that ball from Mookie. Total fan of interference, total overboard, total craziness there. But what a moment. And if that is an actual turning point for this series, that's going to be kind of funny. I thought we were going to have more time, but you know what? We're just going to call it today. Folks, thank you so much for joining us here on Locked On Rockies. We are free and streaming on your favorite streaming services. We're also on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel. Be part of the show. Let me know what's on your mind when it comes to the Colorado Rockies. You can find us on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel. You can be part of the show, leaving those comments, all that good stuff. And for your next listen of the day, go check out Locked On MLB, Locked On Broncos, Locked On Avalanche, Locked On Nuggets, and Locked On Buffs. Also free and streaming for you to enjoy and stay up to date with the Colorado sports you know and love. Until next time, this is Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.